All right, so today's portion is Emor, which means to speak. This is one of the words that's repeated a lot in the Torah. It says, "And our father spoke to Moses, saying," and this is the words that our father speak is life to us. And this portion in Leviticus starts at 21, verse 1, and it ends at 24, and this is an interesting portion because, as we saw last week, it's a progression. I'm not going to repeat all the parashas up to Leviticus 16 as I did last week, but Leviticus 16 is about the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, and its instruction to the priesthood and their experience. And we see again in this portion 21, it speaks about who qualifies to be a priest and who is excluded from ministering at the altar, etc. So as we go along, last week we saw that Leviticus 19, which follows the portion that was dedicated to the priesthood, is to all Israelites. It's to us, the normal people that's functioning in the kingdom. And then again this week in Leviticus 22, it seems like it's repeating itself. Leviticus 22 is to the normal nation. And then all together, the priesthood and the nation, we celebrate the festivals that's described in Leviticus 23. So, and then this is quite an interesting parasha because it ends, toward the end, it is speaking about the realities of the menorah. It is the light that is sent from the Father, the menorah in Leviticus 23 end. And then at the end, it speaks about the young man that blasphemed against our father. So, I think this is one of... Okay, quick rabbit trail. This is one of the only people that caused the problem that is described, whose mother is described. Shelomit, the son of the daughter, sorry about that, the daughter of Divri, a son of Dan. So why would it be? Why is this person identified like this? There's a bit of a traditional, there's a bit of a tradition as far as this is concerned, and the story goes, I don't know how much of it is, it's not biblical truth, but it's interesting. So it says that this man, the son, that the blasphemer is, it says it's a son of an Israelite woman and Egyptian man, all right? So the Egyptian man is never named. And but the tradition goes like this. In the days that Moses was in Egypt, he encountered a Egyptian that was really hammering an Israelite. You remember that story? And Moses' heart was enraged, and he thought, he's acting against my kindred. And he stood up and he killed the Egyptian. You remember that story? So why did the Egyptian really target this Israeli man? If we can go one step back, it says this was an officer, and he called his foreman, the Israeli foreman in the houses, and as he was discussing with them, he was in one of the Israeli houses, and he saw this beautiful wife of this one Israeli, and when everybody left, he went in and basically took advantage of her, and out of that relationship came this blasphemer, this man. But now this young man should have been 40 plus now. And so it's interesting that he again fights with an Israeli man. So there's another fighting taking place. So just a little bit of a rabbit trail. It's interesting that the same thing repeats itself. And so what should we learn from that? This is one of the only parashas that I know of that ends on a negative note, that ends with a blasphemer being stoned. So what should we learn from this? Is that I think through trials, through things that we go through in our lives, we should bring them back and bring them to the Father and find healing, so that healing can come. Because this family didn't have healing then. So if healing comes, we can make teshuvah, we can be restored in the presence of the Father, and the same thing wouldn't repeat itself in the lives of our families. So it is a little bit of a positive thing, I think. So if we think about the trend that we are in, and last week was spoke about this a little bit as well. It's the trend of the Father is busy with the restoration process in our lives. Do you agree? Who are you unfamiliar with the concept? This is why our fellowship is called restoration, because Acts says that the Father is busy with at the end of times, the restoration of all things will be complete. So in our lives, we are walking down a path, being restored to the truths, restored to the beauty of what the Father has for us in our lives. So, where did creation start? Genesis 1:2. Start in the beginning. That's a good place to start. It says, and the earth came to be formless and empty. Think about this when you read it. Think about our lives. Think about the lives of humanity experiencing this. It says, and the earth came to be formless and empty, and darkness was in the face of the deep. And the Ruach Elohim was merechefet al panei hamayim. So, as we go about in our lives, and we live a life apart from the Father, our lives get to a place where it's chaotic. It became dark, empty, formless, chaotic from the perspective of the Father. And the Father is busy restoring our lives. And as He did it with nature, He's busy with you and I in our lives. So, our Father's changed creation. He changed chaos to order. And as we see in nature, everything has a proper place, a function. He's got a role and a task to fulfill. This is why Leviticus 11, I'm just thinking about it, why is one of the reasons that's given that we are not to eat amphibious animals, those creepy crawlies, we are not to eat those. Why is that? Because they don't function in a set place. They function in the water, they function out of the water. There's no boundaries that they submit themselves to. It's all over the place. So this is one of the symbolic reasons why we don't eat those things that the Father created to bless the rest of the creation. They've got a specific role and a function, and it's given for us to understand. So, as we are familiarizing ourselves and getting to a place where we are more focusing on the holiness of our Father and what it means to be set apart, we realize that He has given us definite and clear boundaries where we can function so that we can experience His love and His grace and His mercy and all the goodness that He has for us. The moment we go beyond that boundaries and we enter into a place, we're going into a place of chaos, into darkness and void of His presence in our lives. So that's why it's dangerous, and that's why we are free to do anything we like within the boundaries of Torah. Okay, so it's quite simple. So in Eden, in the place where Adam and Chava there was harmony between nature and man. Man was set as the governors. They were set as the one for the ambassadors, the king that was supposed to rule and reign on the earth. But because sin came along, and Adam and Chava didn't respect the boundaries that our Father gave to them, what happened is the order that the Father has established for a blessing for humanity and for the experience of the whole creation. That order was upset, and now chaos ensued. And in our lives, when we experience chaos, we know that that's not the perfect will of the Father. So He said, "Do not eat of the fruit of the tree," and the Nachash, the enemy, had a better plan, not a better plan, he had another plan, and we know from that we are where we are at the moment. So, the moment that the boundaries was crossed, the set-apartness of man fell away, and as sin came and became part of the existence of man, we lost our innocence, death came in, death are reigning in our lives, chaos ensued. And we know in the lives of going up to Noah is that the chaos, the darkness grew deeper and deeper until a deep darkness settled on the nations. Is that familiar in our day? I think that is what Isaiah says for our day as well, is a deep darkness will cover the earth and will grow deeper and deeper unto a place where we really are so desperate for the light and the holiness of our Father. And I think this is where we are at the moment. So nature and culture came into conflict, because remember, nature is the place that the Father has given us to live, and culture is the world that we create with our habits and the things that we are doing, and every culture has an expression how they function in nature, and weird and wonderful things have been developed culturally across the globe over thousands of years, and that is where idolatry comes from, because culture started to worship nature itself. So we're in absolute chaos. So how do we come back from that? This is the problem. How do we return back from a place of chaos and darkness and lifelessness to Eden? Because that's where we are going. We're going to a place of light, of life and blessing, where order functions, and back into the way that the Father has created it. So today I thought last week I spoke just a short while about the letter 7, the number 7, remember? And what is 7, the essential truth? What is number 7 represent? Wholeness, perfectness, what the Father has given us, the way He has given us to function. And Shemoneh is number 8, and it comes from the root Shemain. So I wonder if you're battling with your weight and your mummy was called Shemain, maybe that was, maybe there's something to be addressed. But it's the thing is, remember in ancient days, to be covered with fat was a blessing, because there were lack all around. In our cultural experience of the day, maybe not so much. But back in the day, it was a big blessing, because it says it's evidence of a life that lives in superabundance, because it says Shemain means to superabound, So if you can have a life overflowing with the goodness of the Father amongst times being oppressed, then it's if you look at portraits or sculptures, whatever that came out of the biblical periods, men are always, they are built like you can't believe. And the woman was not so skinny as we would like them to be today. The woman was more fuller figures, because that was what was a blessing in that cultural existence. So it is, that's just how it is. It also means, a participle, as far as I understand it, is something that describes the verb. So it means the one who abounds in strength. So strength and superabundance and all of those concepts are together. It means superabundant fertility. Okay, let's not expand on that. And oil, it's all the high priest, the king, smeared with oil. That is what means to be the Mashiach. It's when you are smeared with oil. So those concepts all flow together. So it is Shemoneh is the character 8 is a new beginning of blessing. That's what it says. It represents a time, a period, some reality in your life where the Father is doing something new. And He's restoring some aspects of Eden back in your life. His presence, His closeness, His goodness. So if we think about the tabernacle, before we speak about Ezekiel's temple, 8 in the tabernacle, what can you think of? Where did 8 function in the tabernacle? Have you got an idea? What's that? Loshma, the 8th bread. It is, remember it's, what's that? 8 plus 4. 8 plus 4 breads. Okay. Alright, so 8, if I think about our Torah portions, remember Nadav and Abihu's story? On what day was the priesthood consecrated? On the 8th day. They were 7 days they spent at the door of the tabernacle. On the 8th day, the tabernacle was consecrated. Now think about Noah's ark. There's a connection there. Noah worked on the ark like Moses, and the nation built the ark for many years, and Moses and the nation built the ark for a much shorter period. Maybe it's because it was a nation, not a man and his family. But then when Noah and the animals and everybody went into the ark, how long did the door remain open before the Father sealed it? 7 days. On the 8th day the door was sealed. So the priesthood, 7 days at the door of the tent of meeting, and on the 8th day the illumination, the starting of the worship protocol, everything that the Father has set apart started to happen. It was a new beginning in the life of Israel. The tabernacle functioned in their midst. So in Ezekiel's temple, there is 7 steps that led into the outer court from the city, and from the outer court to the inner court, there are 8 steps. So 7 and 8 functioning together in the temple of Ezekiel. So what does it mean? It says that 7 leads us from labor to rest. Day 1 to 6, we work. We're out there. We are working. We are laboring. And on the 7th day, Shabbat, it brings us to a place to shevet. To sit. You are sitting. You're sheveting. So we are resting. We are having a Shabbat. We are having fellowship. We are studying. We are worshipping the Father. That's what we are doing. So while we are in a place of rest, 8 leads us from rest to worship. So 8 is a place where we can refocus on what the Father is doing in our lives, and we can focus on Him, and we can worship Him with a heart of rest, a heart of completeness, fullness. Okay, so, and in so doing, if you look at the realities that's functioning there, we are flowing in the process of being restored from a place of chaos to a place of order, where we rest in the Father and where we can worship Him in spirit and in truth. That's where we're heading. That's where we're going. All right, so if we think about where in the Scripture it speaks about realities that supports the idea of why 8 is a new beginning. We know that Noah was the 8th person, 2 Peter says. He was the 8th person who stepped out onto a new earth when the earth was judged. The newness started with Noah. Noah's Ark said that it was 7 days open, 8th day it was closed. There were 8 souls in 1 Peter 3:20 that came back into this new world that was formed. And then there is a concept of the 8th day circumcision that I thought about. So what does that represent though? Why the 8th day circumcision? Why would that be connected with new? What do you think? Ideas? What do you think? Covenant and consecration. Yes, it shows that we are coming from a place where we don't focus on the Father. There's no connection with Him. Now we've got a covenantal relationship with Him. Our hearts are being restored. We are flowing in a covenantal relationship. That's why that's in there. So, and it has got a foreshadowing of our covenantal relationship. We've got a Messiah as well. So all of these are helping us to focus on our Father, to worship Him in spirit and in truth, and know that we have the first fruits of our relationship that will continue forever as a new creation. Okay, so firstly, as we are returning to the Father in a covenantal relationship, we are being renewed. We become a new creation. Not my body doesn't experience that a lot. I don't know. Do you share that experience? My body is not fully renewed and recreated. That will happen in the future. But my spirit and soul, my spirit has been renewed, regenerated, and my soul now in this life is being sanctified and renewed. We are getting the mind of Messiah within us by studying the Word, by infused in the Spirit and living in biblical ways, for accepting the Father's ways and being obedient to that. We are being led from chaos back into order. My body not so much at the moment. So that will be renewed at rebirth in the new millennium. So, interesting that 8 is the first cubic number. 2 by 2 by 2 is 8. So, first one. So, why is it important? Where do we see cubes in the cubic idea in Scripture? Yes, the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh Kodeshim. How big was it? What do you think? How big was the most set apart place? 10 by 10 by 10. And the answer is 1,000. So it is firstly the one cube. The smallest one is the altar of incense. It's a cube by a perfect cube. And that's where we lay down that's where we bring our prayers, where we engage with the Father symbolically in prayer. And that leads us to the Holy of Holies, which is 1,000. So where are we going to, when and where are we going to spend time in His... We spoke about it this morning. We've got a heart's desire to be in His presence and see the closeness to His Shekhinah every day. But in this life it's difficult. But in the new millennium it will be possible. So if you look at the dimensions of the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle, it says, for 1,000 years we are going to spend time in His presence. Because who is returning at the coming of Messiah? Oh, that was interesting. Who's returning for the beginning of the millennium? Messiah, yes, but I led you into, without even knowing, I led you in a way. Because remember it says, the one that was and is and will come will be here as well. Our Father, Yotevave, will sit in the most holy place in the temple, and Messiah the high priest will function. So both of them are returning. So for 1,000 years in the tabernacle, He will be here. So, and then we see that the most holy place in the temple, Solomon's temple, was 20 by 20. It was 8,000 cubits, double the size. Well, not double the size, but yeah. Anyways, sorry, that's where my math stops. And but if we think about the New Jerusalem, that's where I'm heading. Think of the New Jerusalem. Now, those measurements were in cubits. This one is not cubits, that's furlongs. Do you know how long a furlong is? If you walk in it, it will carry on furlong. You know? That's how long it is. So it's 200 meters. One furlong is 200 meters. So if you do the quick calculation, 2,400, you see how quick I am. It's 2,400 kilometers in one direction. It's from George to Swakopmund. That's the dimension. That's the one side of the city. And then 2,000 to 4,000. It's 2,400 meters like this, flat. And then how high is our atmosphere? How far does it reach? About, more or less, on a good day, if the ozone is reconstructed perfectly. Yeah, 12, 13 kilometers. The city of the New Jerusalem extends for 2,400 kilometers. It seems like the new heaven and the new earth is really needed here. You know, so I don't know how the Father is going to fit that city on this earth, and if it's highly symbolic. Yes, there is an answer at the back. Tanny Louise, but she needs a mic, because I've got a mic. Yes, the atmosphere before. Yes. Atmosphere is 7 different layers. I'll relay your message. Yes. So I think the atmosphere in the days of Adam to Noah was completely different from what we have right now. So the atmosphere was different. Whether it extended for 2,400 kilometers, I don't know. But maybe we'll have to hold our breaths for that last couple of floors in the New Jerusalem. I'm not sure. But anyways, so do you know in the tabernacle, the first sacrifice that took place with the consecration of the tabernacle was not during the first 7 days, it started on the 8th day. Started on the 8th day. So our relationship with the Father, our covenantal relationship and our worship is completely new. It speaks about renewing our relationship with the Father. I think this is the story. So that was the answer to that question. And so as we come on the Shabbat to worship the Father, as we are coming here as a family, as believers in our Father, we are coming here to say that we make a decision to rest on this day. So this is a public declaration that together we are resting in His presence, and we're putting the laborers of the week, the labor of the week, we're putting aside, we're forgetting about it, as long as they don't phone you. And we are here to do one thing. What are we here to do? Number 8, to re-establish, to recreate our relationship with Him, to worship Him in spirit and in truth. That's what we are here to do. All right, so there is the concept of light bearing. Because remember, He is light. Messiah says He is the light of the world, and we are a reflection of the light that He brings. So we are light bearers of the kingdom, and it's our responsibility to take this light that He shares with us and to shine it in the week, the rest of the days, the rest of the 6 days. So we are taking the light that we receive from the Father in the time of our worship together, and we take this light, the light that we find in the Word, and we dwell on it, we meditate upon it, and we share it with the rest of our friends and family. We share that light through the week so that His name may be glorified. And if we restart, what is the Father doing at the moment? What do you think is the Father's, what is He busy with? Because remember, day 1 to 7, or day 1 to 6, He worked the work of creation, and first in creating order and from chaos and forming and making and molding. That's what He was doing. The 7th day He rested. So what did He do after that? What's He busy doing right now? What do you think? Maintaining. Oh, at the moment He's shaking. At the moment He's shaking. But I think He is involved with us, calling us back into relationship, to restore, to make new. And I think it involves not only good things, it involves better things like shaking. You know? Yes. There is an aspect of separation that takes place. It says that those who are shining will become, those that dwells in the light will become brighter, and those who dwells in the dark will become darker. So I think there is a different separation that's taking place, and that is part of. We'll work through a bit of Matthew 13, and that is the teaching of Matthew 13, is that there is a separation that's taking place. So, yes. Yeah. That's part of the separation that's taking place. Is as he is going through shaking and calling us, that those that's got a heart after Him will draw closer to the Father, and those that stand against Him will walk away from Him. So I think that's part of what it is. So days are divided in 8 equal parts. Do you know that? If you read Matthew 14, it says that there are 8 watches during the day. 4 in the night, 4 in the day. And so, I wonder what it means in terms of renewing. Have you got an idea? I don't. What will that mean? Do you think that's got bearing on the story? When is Messiah resurrected? When was Messiah resurrected in the week? That's the next point. He was resurrected on which day? The first day of the week He was resurrected. So if you look at the day 1 to 7, right, the following day is the 8th day. He was resurrected on the 8th day because it signifies something new. His life that He was resurrected in becomes our life, and as we celebrate it and dwell in that, it becomes the connection point where we can walk forward in the presence of the Father. So, as we're counting the Omer, on which day are we now, by the way? Do you know? 28. We're on day 28, so that's why resurrection is about 10, 12 days from now. So it's so 7 Shavuot, 7 weeks. 7 weeks we count. And after the 7th day of the 7th Shavuot is the 50th day. It's the 8th day of that week. The 8th day of that week. So we celebrate the pouring out of the Ruach and the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. So both of those were new in the day. The giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai was new to the nation of Israel. It's new to our existence, so that they knew what it means to worship the Father from their perspective in the wilderness. This pouring out of the Ruach in Acts 2 was a new experience that helped us from that point forward to function in the Father's presence. So, after Sukkot, there is an 8th day called Shemini Atzeret, which is the time when the New Jerusalem is placed on the earth. Do you know that Yeshua was seen 8 times after his resurrection? Those are the verses. And I think there are so many more points that one can mention about the number 8. It's such an amazing, it's actually a point of study that one can drill into and find the purpose, what the Father is for our whole relationship with Him. So if we look at that, it is a renewing, that making teshuvah in our lives and restoring and renewing us so that we can come in the order of worship that He planned from the very beginning and walk in peace and in joy before Him. That's where we're going. So how will your heart be? What is the condition of your heart if you realize, as we read this morning Psalm 42 beforehand, as the deer pants for the water, my soul longeth after Thee. So, this is your existence. My soul, my life yearns after the presence of the Father. Now suddenly, He puts His Spirit within you. He gives you His Word. What will be the experience of your heart? Will you be a little bit glad? Joy overflowing. That's what it is. So I think as we go along, and I will speak a little bit of Matthew 13, which I understand. And I think the challenge to our worshipping and flowing together as a family is what is the measure of your treasure? What is that one key, one thing that will guarantee us to flow together and to live together in peace and in harmony and so forth. So we'll speak about that. So last thing about 8. Do you know Elijah had 8 miracles? There's 8 miracles recorded. How many miracles did Elisha do? How many miracles was recorded for him? Double. So that's 16. 16 miracles, because he says in 2 Kings 2:9, let a double portion of your Spirit be upon me. That's amazing. I thought I must mention that. So if we look at Psalm 28:7, let's just read through these 4 or 5 texts together, just to set the rest of the story up. It says, Adonai is my strength and my shield. My heart has trusted in Him, and I have been helped. Therefore my heart exalts, and with song I thank Him. What's the general experience of that? It is gratitude, and I'm so glad that the Father has brought me into this place. So 2 Corinthians says, wherefore if any man is in Messiah, he is a new creation, and old things have passed away, and behold, they are become new. My body really battles with that one. Newness is not so well with my body. So Romans 15:13 says, now to the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, that you may abound in hope and the power of the Ruach HaKodesh. So I think this is interesting, is if our Father fills you with hope, what will be your portion? Peace and faith and joy will be part of your experience, so that if you experience that hope might be overflowing in the power of the Ruach. Okay, so if our Father is our strength and our shield, and my heart trusts in Him, and we have that experience because of what Messiah has done for us, what will be your portion? You will be filled with hope and joy and faith, and we will be glad in Jehovah and rejoice, you righteous. Okay, there's a little bit of a problem. Who can rejoice? The ones that are righteous. Shout for joy, all you that are upright in heart. So there's a little bit of a responsibility on our side as well. There's a little bit of a responsibility, and I think if we follow this trend, it says the Father has done everything for us to come closer to Him in relationship. He's given us an opportunity to enter into a covenantal relationship, And He opens the doors and He says, come in through Messiah, just, But if you read Psalm 32, it says, we can be glad in our Father and rejoice, you righteous. Shout for joy, all ye that are upright in heart. Who can ascend to the hill of our Father? Clean hands and pure hearts. How do we get there, though? We come through the door of Messiah. Now we're in the kingdom, Baruch Hashem. But there is a responsibility in your life and mine that we will be sanctified by the word through the power of the Spirit. Okay? You remember that story of the five virgins with the oil and the five without the oil? They were all virgins. They were all set. They were all part of the bride. They were all good. 5 said, I don't know you. The others, come in. So, we find something that in this, as we read through the Torah portion this morning, I think it's around about Leviticus 23 verse 40 about, where in the experience of Sukkot, it says, you will be joyous. That's it. You and your wife and your children and those who work in your house, everybody, you can come. There's one condition. You will be joyous. Why will we have to be joyous in the festival of Sukkot? Because that is the time where the family of Israel, the family of the Father, is in victory coming together and saying, speaking of all the goodness and what He has done in our lives. So, in Psalms 149:2 it says, let Israel be glad in his Maker, and let the children of Zion rejoice in a King. By the way, it doesn't say if you feel like it. Because it doesn't depend on your emotional state or where you are at. It's a recognition of who the Father is and what He has done for us. Psalm 2:11 says, serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. So the rejoicing, there's a character to the rejoicing. If we know the fear, the awe of the Father, then we can rejoice in Him with trembling. Let Jacob rejoice and Israel be glad. And Psalm 97 says, rejoice in our Father. And Psalm 100 says, serve our Father with gladness. And 32 says, be glad in the Lord and rejoice, our righteous, and shout for joy. I've read that one. So I think a good way to proceed is let's speak about joy. All right? So, before we do that, let's think about Messiah. If joy is commanded and sort of imperative for our appearing before the King, what was Messiah's experience? Isaiah 53:3 says of Messiah, He was despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and as one from whom men hide their face. He was despised, and we esteem Him not. So how does joy come into that? How did He experience joy? Look at the life that He lived. He was despised and rejected, and His own nation didn't accept Him as being the Messiah. He went through everything in His life to lay down His life literally and figuratively for the benefit of His brothers and sisters, and they rejected Him, mostly. So, did Messiah have joy? It says, surely He hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we did esteem Him stricken, smitten of God and afflicted. Smitten of our Father and afflicted. But Hebrews 12, the testimony of His life says, looking at to Messiah, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before Him endured the cross, so, despising shame, and hath sat down at the right hand of the throne of Elohim. So all of His experience and everything that was prophesied in His life was true. All of the trials and tribulations, everything that He went through, it says, He did so with joy. So He knew the joy, He knew the purpose of His life, and He went through it because of the joy that the Father has instilled in His heart. So there's one principle that we must understand, and true joy, if we want to be truly joyous in the Father, it comes one way only, and it comes by trials. That's the good news of the day, by the way. So, true joy, if you want to have it, who wants true joy? 2 hands, 3 hands, 4 hands. Just remember, there is something there. And if we say, Father, help us to experience your joy. Your joy is my strength, remember? If we want to experience joy, it comes in one or another way. So if we read Matthew 13 today, Matthew 13 there are how many? 7 public parables, 3 private explanations to what it means to his disciples, and 2 statements of the purpose of these parables. So that's Matthew 13. But it gives us 2 keys, or it gives us 2 lessons about the joy of our Father, or the joy that we have in Him. It firstly says what it is and what it isn't. If we go through the parable, how do we identify it? What does it look like? And how do we distinguish the one from the true joy from false joy? So Matthew 13 is interesting as far as it is from that perspective. So the categories of the parables, the 7 parables in Matthew 13. No, I can't. No, I can, by the way. So that's, I'll go one better. I'll send you the link on the internet and you can look at it afterwards. Oh, then I'll give you a DVD. What do you say about that? So let's go. It says, there are a couple of categories in Matthew 13, and it says, how do you hear the word? And this is, what is the effect of the word in your life and in my life? And we find it in the parable of the sower. Your 4 soils, remember? That is, how do we hear the word? And the next category is the mixture. Because the Torah is quite serious about not mixing. And so if we look at the soils, or what this parable is trying to communicate, it says, the mixture of the good and the bad in this age and their separation at the end of the age. So what we are seeing is there are good and bad functioning together in this age, and we battle to distinguish the difference between the two. But be sure, at the end of the age, the tares and the wheat will be separated. The good fish and the bad fish in the net, they will be separated. So what happens to the wheat? It's brought into the storehouse of the Father. What happens to the tares? It's burnt. What happened to the good fish? Well, it's sold to the family. What happens to the bad fish? It doesn't go to the Gentiles, by the way. It's thrown into the furnace. All right, so the growth of the kingdom is another category, and we see it in the mustard seed, a small seed that's sown, and it grows up into a huge bush, and it's connection with faith. And leaven permeates every little fiber of the challah, of the dough, and as it grows, so it brings blessing to the dough. So it's the growth of the kingdom in our lives. And then the last thing is the value and the worth of the kingdom. So we find a treasure in a field in Matthew 13. It says, we identify a treasure, and what's your response to it? And the next one is a pearl that a merchant sees. And what is he prepared to do to have that pearl? So, those are the categories of the parables in Matthew 13. And it should tell a story, because they are not just thrown together by happenstance. They are put together for a reason. And hidden in there is a key. And how do we function and how do we live our lives? And I think remember, Messiah says, what is your understanding? Do you understand? Late in the chapter. And they say, in my scripture it says, yeah. It doesn't say yes, it says, yeah. Don't know why that's in there. But anyways, that's the translation. I suppose they had an informal relationship. So, and I think in our lives, it's... the question is asked in our lives too. Do we understand the impact of joy in our lives? According to that chapter. And I think we do, but I think there is some refining that we need to do. So So it's the word joy. What is the word for joy in Hebrew? Simcha. Yes, simcha. And in Greek, chara. It says it's the word chara. And I always wondered what does Chara Lodge, Reiki's place, mean. So now I found out. It used to be Greek to me. So it is. So in verse 20 and verse 44, there are two appearances of the 6 appearances of joy in Matthew. And I think if we study the place that they're in and how they are mentioned, it gives us a clue and it helps us to understand how to distinguish between real joy and fleeting joy. Okay, so let's start at verse 44 because we can. So the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Okay, so it's a treasure that he sees in a field. So why doesn't he just take it and go? Why doesn't he do it? I mean, it's a treasure in a field that's hidden. Because he's a righteous man. Remember we read about righteousness before? He is a righteous man. And then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field, because then legitimately the treasure is his. If he took the treasure and ran, people will ask him, where did you find the treasure? And now he's a thief. But he's got a relationship with our Father. He's a pure heart and clean hands. He buys the field. Matthew 13, verse 44. So, and now the sower. Let's go through that parable. So first soil, what was so beautiful to me is when we went to Israel, we went to Nazareth. And you know, Nazareth is on a hill slope. And they reckon this might be the town that Messiah lived in, grew up in. And as we sat down and the guide explained the whole story, this town is built on a slope, and on the slope, the hill slope, there are terraces that they have built. Now, believe me, there's not an inch of soil on that hill slope. It's a rock. So what they've done is, I may be exaggerating, but for hundreds of meters, they have created terraces. How do you create a terrace in the olden days? You walk down to the bottom and you find stones, rocks, and you carry them back up and you build a terrace, rock by rock. And then when you think you're done, you need to bring the soil. So then you go down and you fetch the soil from the bottom where all the soil over many years has settled, and you bring the soil up and you fill the terraces one by one by one by one. You fill it with soil. And so it's a beautiful visual picture of this parable. So Messiah sits on the slope like this, and he explains to his disciples, and he says, do you see this path that we were building this terrace? Because he was a native to that little town, he lived there, he probably helped build these things. And he says, you know this path that is kliphard, that they've been walking up and down, that the donkeys are going up and down to carry this. If a seed is sown in this path, what will happen to it? It will be trampled upon. It won't grow. The birds devour it before it takes root. The second soil is next to this path, where they haven't filled it with the soil, the fertile soil from the bottom. That's really what the hill slope would look like. It's not even an inch thick. So deep, not thick, deep. Thick is okay, anyways, let's go on. Almost went on another path where I shouldn't. So wisdom prevails. So next to where they fill this up, there's a thin little layer of soil, and when your seed falls into that, it will grow because there's warmth and whatever, and soil. And as soon as the scorching sun comes along and there's no moisture in this shallow soil, it will die. Okay? Third soil has thorns, where the cultivation doesn't take place, and it will choke the life out of the plant. And the fourth soil, which we've spent months digging up out of the bottom and invested it into our beds in the terraces, that is the good soil that produces an abundance of grain. Now think of the word joy. Where does joy fit in there? Which one of those will you if you look at that picture, don't search in your scriptures. Look there. Where is joy found there? The fourth one. Yes, of course. Only you're wrong, because the second soil, it says, the word finds root, and with joy it sprouts up and grows, but it dies. So if you don't believe me, let's just read Matthew 13:20. I might have it there. Let's just read it because we can. So Matthew, by the way, Matthew is in the New Testament if you wondered. No, and that's after Malachi. 13 is the number for love. So, and where's that? In 20. So it says, and he that was sown upon rocky places, this is he that hears the word, and straightway with joy receives it. Yet he has not root within himself, but he endures for a while, and when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, straightway he stumbles. So if you are searching for the word joy in that parable, it was the second soil. So, the soil of that word, of that soil, is just momentary. It doesn't last. The moment the sun comes up, the moment that there is trials in the life of this believer, it just falls away. So, why does this happen? Because there's no place for his root to take. It hasn't got any substance to it. So, the moment that there is persecutions and trials, he falls away and he disowns the kingdom and he walks away and it's gone. The seed of the word has died in his life. So think about this. There are two men. The one man walks in a field and he sees, he identifies a treasure. He's a treasure seeker. So he identifies the treasure and he sells everything he has. He runs back, actually, covers it up. The word says he covers up so that no one will find it. He runs back and he sells everything he has to get enough money to buy this part of the world. And as he buys this, all he has is this one treasure. There's no cultivation, there's no orchards, there's no nothing. It's just a treasure. So this is now everything he has. And the other one has received the word and experienced jubilant joy. That's all he did. All right? So those are the two men. So the type of joy that they experience is completely different in this parable, in these two parables that's set up before us. So the man that sold everything that he had, he will be commended. The other one, not so much. There's talk of furnaces and all sorts of things. You know, so how do we identify the two differences? Remember the one that sold everything he has. This is his complete focus in his life right now, is this treasure that he has identified. And his joy will be everlasting. And the moment that trials and tribulations set in on the stony soil, then he falls away. His joy was just for a minute, and it's gone. Okay? So, the problem is in our lives is, while we are joyous, how do we distinguish between the two? How do we distinguish in this life, in this age, while we are up and about doing our thing, the joy in your life and in my life and in each other's lives, in the life of the wheat and in the life of the tares? How do we make a distinction between that? But remember, the source of your joy is important. But in this case, it was both the same source. Because the stony soil received the seed of the word, and he rejoiced, and it was good. The treasure seeker, the source of his joy was the treasure that we see to be the word. We identify to be the word in a field. So it's the same source. But our response and our reaction to that experience is a problem. So the way that, remember, both of them experience joy. The first one, the moment he receives the word, the seed sprouts up and he experiences joy. The other one, when does he really experience the joy? the treasure seeker? When does he experience the joy? When he has already sold everything and he returns and he is successful in purchasing this piece of land where the treasure is in. Now he experiences the joy. Okay, so same thing happens, just on a different time. Oh, I'm ahead of myself. So it's difficult. What does Matthew 13 say about the tares and the wheat? It says they grow up together, they function in the field, and you can't see the difference between the two. Yet, at the end, just before they're harvested, you can see the head of the wheat bends in humbleness, and the tare's head is upright in pride. Then you see it. Okay? And when the fish are brought in by a net, you can't see the difference between different fish, but when it's opened up on the boat, you can see, oh, good fish, bad fish. I don't know on a boat where they find a furnace. But anyways, that's a different story, I suppose. But so what do we learn? What do you think is the difference between these two types of joy? The joy that these two experience. What makes it to be the difference? What's that? Okay, so we know the effect and the endurance of the joy is the one endures forever, and the other one is for a moment and it's gone. Okay, so why? So yes, Mevrou Pinaar. Yes, that is exactly the point. Yeah. So on the treasure seeker, it cost him something. He invested his life and everything that he had into this to get this treasure, to make it his. The other one, it was sown into his life by an external source, the sower. He received it and he responded favorably, but it cost him nothing. So we should take into account, as I said, that the Father sees and He distinguishes between in this field. He looks from above and He sees the difference between the wheat and the tares. But for us, it's difficult. All right, so what is that? Of the net and the fish, the kingdom gathers fish of every kind in Matthew 47, 13:47, and the same story accounts as we see for the wheat and the tares. So it is difficult for us, I think for me to identify the joy that's in your life. It's virtually impossible for me to see it. But when do we see the value and when do we see this joy functioning? And I think that's the way we tell them apart is think about this. When the stony soil received the seed, there was a little bit of moisture, there was seed, everything was good in his life. Suddenly the seed grew and fruit came. What happened when the scorching sun came above? Did he maintain his joy? His joy was lost. So if there is trials and difficulty and tribulation coming in your life, how do we know who's got deep soil and who's got shallow soil? Is the moment that tribulation trials comes in your life and you start to rant and rave and lose all your joy, it must be, there's a little alarm that must go off, a red light in your own life, saying that maybe I should deepen my soil. So that's the truth. Remember, the source of the seed is the same. Our Father calls us, He gives us the seed. Your response, we're talking about our response now. So what happens today? For those who don't know, this is a short commercial break. We are baking challah every Thursday night. Every Friday morning. It's available. If you want it, speak to my lovely wife. She'll guide you in the right direction. So, in my experience of challah baking though, is how do you get a mixture of stuff, of flour and water and oil and eggs and salt and sugar and all the beautiful stuff in there. How do you get them to become one? How do you get this challah, this dough that's sitting here, to become one? Mix. And you know how it works? There's this lovely bowl. It's sort of shaped not completely like this, but imagine this. But in there is a arm, and it turns, baby. It turns and it mixes and it forces that different ingredients. Thank you. The different ingredients to be mixed together for long enough. And remember, the baker watches this dough. And according to a time that he has set, is the fullness of what happens in this mixing process. If it carries too long, the dough will tear, I hear. If you don't mix it long enough, the quality of your challah is not good enough. So, the moment that you see that the dough functions together in unity in that bowl, and it becomes satiny, the structure becomes so lovely, then you can take it out. It's ready. It's good. So, the leaven in the dough must permeate every fiber, every little portion, because if there is an area in this dough that the leaven hasn't gone into, what will happen to it? There will be a klont in the dough. It'll not be nice. So, what we are looking for is a growing sense of joy in our experience of the kingdom. As we are going forward together and we're experiencing a little bit of friction and we experience a little bit of the Father's hand in our lives, then Irina said that the world is shaken. You know what's busy happening? Is the Father is stirring. The baker is stirring in our lives, and he says, what are we going? Where are we going? Are you going to maintain your joy? Are you going to maintain your joy in your walk, in your talk, every area of your life? Are you going to maintain hope? Or are you going to become grumpy and turn away? Because that's what happening in the scorching sun. If you get hot, is you turn around. I'm thinking, my granddaughter had a mountain bike training exercise. Now she's first year of her school experience, and so the teacher has her ride up and down on a quite a long track. And when she gets out, she comes into the bakkie to Rian, and she falls down on the bakkie. She says, "Pa, water kom uit my hare uit." I'm hot as can be. He says, "Yeah, my child, you're sweating." So this happens to us. It takes work, it takes in perseverance and endurance, and it only grows through experience. That's how it works. So, it's not only there for an experience. You go to a lovely setting and you hear the word of truth and your heart responds to it, and you stand up and you say, "Yes, I will do it." And when you walk out there, someone confronts you or a circumstance confronts you, the hot scorching sun, you lose your testimony of the kingdom. That's not how it works. It is the key distinction between the joy of the treasure seeker and the joy of the second soil is our response to trial and tribulation. Why do you think the Father brings that in our life? Why does He promise a great tribulation at the end? Is it just because He can, or is there a purpose to it? There is a purpose. And every trial and tribulation that we are going through right now is training ground to make you successful for what is coming. So trials prove our joy, the quality of our joy. If we are thinking about what the treasure seeker, the guy that finds the treasure in the field, how did he experience his joy, and what was his response? He laid down everything. He gave everything to have this treasure in his life. So what will we do for the treasure of the kingdom in our lives? Do you hold back some area of your life that's not part of the kingdom? What's going to happen is the leaven never permeates that area. Because you and I, we are going to present 2 loaves not too far from now. because there's a new leaven growing in your being and in mine. That's the leaven of the kingdom. And together at Shavuot, in 3-4 weeks' time, 3 weeks probably, as we are going to hold up 2 big breads, 2 big challahs, and saying, as a testimony of our experience, is the leaven of the kingdom has permeated every fiber of my being, our being. As a testimony that we are ready to go into the summertime. The summer in Israel is a hot time when no rain falls. But we have experienced the blessing of what has been poured in and given into our lives. And together now we can go through the scorching sun. And this is the time of extreme heat in Israel is the time of fruit bearing. That is the time when the dates are coming, when the grapes, the pomegranates, the figs, the olives, every of those 7 beautiful fruit that the Father has given in the lives of Israel as a testimony of His goodness, that gets matured in summertime. So, do you want to have joy? Overflowing joy. Are you looking forward to the time where we can experience the full joy of what the Father has for us? I think we should, Let me respond for you, because I see you're hesitant. We should. But there is a responsibility in your life and mine, is that how do we respond to the trials? Because what happens is, in some areas of my life, and probably some of you too, there are shallow soil. There are areas that I am shallow. And how do you change that? Because the second soil, do you think there is a plan, there is a hope for that soil? I think in the message there is hope, is that we can cultivate the hardness and the callousness of our hearts to deepen that soil, to get us to receive the seed of the word, so that we can bear fruit. But how do you break fallow ground? Because that's what's going to happen in that shallow soil. How do you break it? Violently. That's what happens with a ripper. That's what happened. So if there is hard soil, if there is an area of hardness, of resistance in your life, my advice is lay it down before the Father so that He can, with His mercy and His goodness, change it. Make teshuvah in that area before the ripper comes. Because there's a ripper out there. So, the treasure seeker's root in his joy runs deep, but the second soil is tested and it's found to be shallow. So that's not the end of the world for him. It is a symptom. If there's an area in your life that you find you respond without love, remember that Galatians 5:22 place? You remember that? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control, all of that. That is, by the way, that's a fruit. There are not various types of fruit. All of that describes the measure, the quality of your fruit. So if patience is lacking in your life, the Father has got a solution to that. He'll submit you to a place where you need to exercise patience to deepen that part of your soil. Yes. Yeah. We need to. Yes, pride is a problem. So how do we, if you experience pride in your life, what is a good way to get rid of your pride? I think identification is the right. So this is, and how it works is, how does it work in the spiritual environment? Is if you discover pride in your life, in an area of your life, firstly you confess. You agree with the Father that is wrong, that's prideful, and I need to get rid of it. So that's confession. And then the second step to creating because that's an area of chaos in your life. How do you get back to order? is first you confess that is sinful and that is dead and chaotic and whatnot. So, and then after you've done that, there's a road back to healing. That's called teshuvah, repentance. You go back to the place that the Father has given you His life. But that comes through softening this area in your heart, laying down our own wills and desires and appetites and whatnot to the place where we can express the Father's goodness and His mercy in that area of your life. And that's a place of humbleness. So that was the question to the disciples. That was the question to the disciples. My question to you is, do we really understand this? Do we understand this in here, or do we understand it with our hearts? And we can so easily agree, yes, we truly understand. Or do we, you remember the response of the disciples? Yeah. You remember that? Have you understood? Yeah. Sometimes it's difficult to truly embrace these truths when you're in the thick of it. When you're in the thick of it, it's difficult to see what's going on. But that's the value of a community. If you're going through a trial, a difficult day, a tribulation, reach out to a friend in this community saying, I'm going through a difficult time, help me to survive. Give me some water while I'm deepening the soil in my life in this one area. Support me, encourage me, be there for me, give me some shade so that we can go through this and that we can grow and bear fruit in every portion, every area of our lives. And this is all to do with the secrets of the kingdom. The secret of the kingdom is He will enable us to endure until the end. The bad news is, my friends, there are no rapture out of the realities of the tribulation. Tribulation will come. We are not going to fly out here before tribulation and sit on the fluffy white clouds and the sweet by and by. It's not going to happen, unfortunately. That would have been a great idea. Not going to happen, because tribulation has a purpose in your life and mine. Is to help us to be shaped. You remember those foolish and wise virgins? What do you think was the expression of the wise virgins' life? They had joy because they went through a place where the oil in their lives comes from olives. Remember? What happens to olives before it can be poured into your little lumpy? Through tribulation. Olives go through tribulation to become light-giving. Same with your heart and mind. So, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That's what it is. Ag, dit louter vreugde wanneer moeilike tye oor jou pad kom. So daar's loutering wat gebeur, en in daai loutering bring vreugde. Ja, sien jy nou. So that is the beauty of an olive. Remember Gethsemane, as we spoke about it a couple of times, the three phases of producing oil? It's interesting. How willing is our lives, our olive, the fruit of our olives, how willing is our lives to bring forth light? Is it severe crushing and pressing that's bringing out the olive oil? Or is it a light pressing? Because if we can get to the place where there's light pressure on our lives to produce olive oil, that is a higher quality of oil. Because if that area of your life needs to be crushed and pressed, little bits of skin and whatever comes out of it, and there's smoke in your light, then the Father knows there's a little bit of purification that needs to take place, yeah? You know? So I think this is the last slide about. So remember, a snapshot of joy is not enough. Our joy should be enduring. This is what it is. Through trials and tribulations, that's what it is. So, what we're looking for, joy endures, and joy that works its way into all of the areas, the leaven will work through all the areas of your life so that everything is nice, and when you are submitted into the oven, That's not a beautiful picture. Anyways, when you're taken out, that's trials and tribulation, remember? The Father prepares your life and you are beautiful and you're taken out of the prover. This is getting into a teaching. It's, as we are mixed, and firstly we are gathered from all the corners of the earth and we are putting in one bowl. We mixed together. Little bit of violence there, but we are mixed together. We are taken out and see how we respond. If the leaven is doing its work in your life, if the dough is rising, then we are taking, a second kneading is taking place quickly, and then we are formed into a shape where we can be submitted to the prover, and then the fruit is even more evident in your life, and then we're baked. Trials, tribulation. What is coming out of it? If you walk into this building on a Friday morning, I'm telling you, when you come into the gate on a Friday morning, you can smell the challah. This is what it is. So, we're looking for a joy that keeps rejoicing even in the face of hardship, affliction, trials, and loss. That is the joy that we're looking, and not what we are looking for. That is the joy that the Father is looking for in your life. That's what He wants. So, yes, you can say something, but you haven't got a mic. That's going to be a problem. Let me give you a mic.
Toe Johan nou gepraat het dit my laat dink, 'n ruk terug het ek 'n paar jaar terug 'n kommentaar van 'n rabbi gehoor wat met Christendom gepraat het. En hy het gesê hy kan dit nie verstaan hoekom Christendom kan verkondig dit kos jou niks om 'n Christen te word nie. Jy kom in en jy hoef niks op te offer nie, alles word vir jou gedoen van daar af. Maar want in sy geloof is dit dat sy geloof kos hom alles. It's dying to self on a daily basis. Jy het die verwagting alles moet neergelê word. En dis hierdie twee prentjies. Vir die een wat inkom en dink dit kos my niks, ek join en ek gaan al die perks hier uit hierdie geloof uit kry. Hy skiet vinnig op, sy joy is kortstondig en hy verloor dit. Maar die een wat gekom het met die verwagting, ek gaan alles moet opoffer. Sy joy gaan bly voortbestaan, al kom daar trials oor sy. Want hy het die verwagting dat die swaar kry gaan kom. Maar as jy nie swaar kry verwag nie, gaan jy jou joy verloor.
So that's one of the reasons why I think that the doctrine of pre-tribulation is setting us up for failure. It's a dangerous doctrine that says that it's going to cost you nothing. It's going to cost other people something, and you're going to sit there and look over the edge of the cloud and rejoice. It's not going to happen like this. It's going to set people up for failure, unfortunately. So I think last 5 points, it says, let our minds be renewed in Messiah. How do we renew our minds in Messiah? Submit your life in obedience to the Scripture. Be led by the Spirit. And remember, if you appear before the King, when do we appear before the King? When we pray. Our incense is put on the altar of incense, and it rises over the curtain, and it intermingles with the cloud of our Father. So, and when you come into His presence, it was illegal to come into the presence of the King with a downcast face. You needed to be joyous. It's not a suggestion. So, our joy is matured through trials, and during the time of Omer, what are we doing? What are we doing? We are preparing those 2 loaves. Those 2 loaves that we will present at the time of the Omer will be a testimony of how the leaven in your life, the leaven of the kingdom, has permeated every fiber. And so, we must be made ready for service in the kingdom, because from Shavuot up to the time of the festival of Sukkot that starts at Yom Teruah, that is the time that the harvest is being cultivated, where we are workers in the field. We are made ready now in the time of the counting of the Omer to be workers in the field. We can't have pride. We can't have things that's going to scare people away from the kingdom. That's who we are. Any questions or so? Jaco. Handel, gee net vir Jaco die mikrofoon asseblief.
Daai gedeelte van Jakobus 1 vers 2 wat aan hierdie nag gelees het, gesê het agter loutere vreugde wanneer allerlei beproewing oor julle pad kom, want daardeur sal die egtheid van julle geloof getoets word. En ek dink ek ervaar dit in my eie lewe dat mense ervaar die meeste groei wanneer jy deur die moeilikste tye gaan. As dit my te goed gaan, dan is dit amper asof ek nie die Here nodig het nie en dan groei 'n mens nie. Maar dit is juis in daai tye wat jy regtig deur 'n trial moet gaan waar die egtheid van jou geloof getoets word, maar wat jy dan op jou laagste voor die Vader is en as jy daai toets deurstaan, is dit asof jy die meeste groei ervaar.
Yes.
Ek weet nie of dit
Yes, dit is, en ek dink dis die doel daarvan. Ek dink dis die doel van daai beproewing en daai moeilike tye in jou lewe.
tribulation ook sal gaan.
Dit is waaroor
al die klein tribulationkies is sodat ons geloof versterk kan word, sodat
Ja.
as die great tribulation kom,
Dat ons gereed is.
Want onthou, die Openbaring praat deeltyd van those who overcome,
Ja, until the end.
until those who endure until the end, who will overcome by the word of the testimony and the blood of the Lamb. So ek dink dis baie belangrik dat ons hierdie klein toetsies moet deurstaan, egtheid van ons geloof kan toets, groei in hom sodat ons die great tribulation kan.
Yes, ek stem 100% saam. Die toetse van Petrus, ja? Ja. Onthou, ja, dis heeltemal reg, ons volgende vandag oor gepraat. Petrus het in die tyd van die kruisiging Yeshua 3 keer verloor. Verloon, nie verloor nie. Wat was die uiteinde van sy geloof? Hy moes eers, onthou, daai was 'n gedeelte van sy lewe gewees, wat die harde grond afgebreek moet word, sodat hy gereed is by die see van Galilea, Yeshua vir hom kom vra, het jy my lief? En dat hy dit herken. En wie was Petrus gewees toe die Ruach oor hom uitgestort is? Hy was die een wat vooruit gaan het en vir die gemeente gepreek het, en 3000 tot bekering gekom het. Hy's 'n rots, sy lewe het die openbaring van sy kennis, dit wat hy gehad het, was die rots waarop Yeshua sy gemeente gebou is. So, dit kan gebeur, dat as daar 'n area van jou lewe is, wat 'n probleem is, waar die Vader se liefde en sy genade nog nie ten volle deurgedring het nie, dat die Vader dit kan gebruik. Maar onthou die hartseer en die pyn wat Petrus deurgegaan het, is dat daar 'n area van jou lewe is wat 'n probleem is, dat dit omgedraai kan word na 'n area wat die vrug van die koninkryk daaruit sal kom. Dis nie die einde van die wêreld as daar iets in ons lewens is wat daar 'n probleem is nie, waar daar 'n uitdaging mee is nie. Dis 'n geleentheid. Dis 'n geleentheid om dit om te draai en dit te laat vrug dra vir die koninkryk. But the first point is, like Jane said, we've got to identify it and to acknowledge it, that it's a problem. And then make teshuvah. We say, Father, it's not in our hands that we can do anything about it. I've been in this place for a couple of years now and I can't get out of it. I've tried. I can't get out of it. Please help me. And then some of these people would encourage you, would help you, would facilitate you to turn around and to walk away with the Spirit so that that area can be sorted out. Okay. Father, we thank you for your grace and your mercy in our lives. Thank you, Father, that we are in your hands and you are molding and making us. Father, I thank you for your mercy, that in areas of each one of our lives where we are lacking, where there is pain, when there is heartache, and where there's brokenness, and we battle to surrender that area that we are sensitive about in our lives to you, Father. Thank you that your love is sufficient. Because, Father, your loving kindness will permeate every fiber of our being. Help us to identify that area, Father. Help us to acknowledge that it's a problem, but help us to recognize the hope that you will be able to restore and to heal that area, so that that can become a testimony of your goodness and your abundance and your mercy in our lives. And it will bear the fruit of the kingdom, and much healing will come out of it. Father, thank you that you are giving us these examples, that you're giving us, that Messiah brought these parables to us so that we can recognize that there might be areas in our lives where we are superficial and we are covering things up that is a problem. Help us, Father, to submit these areas to you and to realize that we are useless, we are hopeless to deal with it ourselves, but you are our hope. You are the one, you are Yotevah Rapha, you are our healer, and that you can heal every area of our lives. We thank you and we worship you in the name of your Son. Thank you that you have given us salvation. Thank you that we have been brought into the kingdom. And thank you that you are making us aware of areas in our lives that are shallow, that are stony ground. But Father, there's a bed, there's a terrace that's been made, that's been prepared for us, where we can bear good fruit. Help us to cultivate every area of our lives so that we will be bearing fruit for the kingdom. We thank you and we worship you. Amen.